Leonardo Pereira, we've seen huge problems in the capital markets post-global financial crisis with the manipulation of key benchmarks around the world, from Tokyo through into Singapore, into the UK, into the United States. What impact has it had in Latin America in general and in Brazil in particular?
Well, first of all, we all have to be very concerned about financial benchmarks in terms of their integrity, because at the end of the day, we use them in our daily life. So what we have been concerned and looking at in Brazil is that as we build our financial benchmarks, we are very careful, and we try to expand the concept and the discussions as much as we can, because we didn't have the problems that other people had, but we don't want to have the problems in the future. And we have to learn with other people, with other mistakes. So we are being very careful, and as we discuss, for example, the formation of the Brazilian Selic, the Brazilian benchmark, and I think that's the main point, is that our concern with integrity, our concern with credibility, because that's how we are going to be building a strong capital markets if we have a primary issue regarding benchmarks, right?
So you haven't identified any particular problem in Brazil at the moment?
No.
But that's not to say that Brazil is somehow immune from any of these issues. These issues could potentially happen in Brazil also.
I think it can happen in any major economy, right? And so we all have to pay attention to that.
And so when you have these discussions with those people who are involved in the setting up of the benchmark, to what extent basically is there a recognition by these people that it is the behavior of similar institutions internationally that has actually caused this problem? That what we're seeing is not just problems within a particular institution, but we're seeing problems across an entire industry, that what we're seeing is collusion, that we're seeing a cartel operating. To what extent is there a recognition that if there is a perception of a cartel at the heart of Brazilian banking, that would actually do much to undermine the legitimacy of the development of capital markets?
Well, as I said, I don't think that's the case in Brazil, but as we also mentioned here, we cannot believe that any major economy, and that applies to Brazil, would be immune to this type of situation. So we have to be very proactive here in making clear what the rules are, the importance of transparency, the importance of the integrity of the financial markets. So I think that's what we are trying to do. As a matter of fact, in Brazil, as in all major capital markets, we have a committee of all the regulators that sit together. And so it sits the central bank, the Securities Commission, the insurance regulator. So we sit together, and on an ongoing basis we assess the risks of the markets, and to prevent things from happening. So I think that, and we are taking this job very seriously, of identifying ahead of time a systemic risk.
And what about the industry itself? I mean, to what extent in this conversation, in this dialogue, is industry also involved in creating the right framework in Brazil?
I think that the industry is involved, and I think then that is very much a job that we have to do together with the central bank. All right, and to make sure that the major players understand what risk measures they have to be implementing to avoid this type of thing from happening. So there is this big discussion about risk management and how the banks and non-banks also have to change their mentality in terms of creating and enhancing the risk management culture. Because at the end of the day, this type of thing comes up when you don't have the right risk framework in place.
And it also happens if you've got an emaciated conception of what corporate responsibility is.
Exactly. Which is also a result of not having the right risk management framework, right? Because if you have the right risk management framework, one of the things that you have to ensure is that you have the right corporate responsibility and transparency and the right levels of accountability in the marketplace. So that's why I strongly believe that we have to work very hard in spreading a risk management culture from a proactive point of view, and in both for the banks and also for the non-banks.
So in a way, do you think, notwithstanding the fact that the LIBOR and associated scandals have highlighted huge problems within individual marketplaces, huge problems of collusion between major institutional actors, perhaps in a way it has been a blessing in disguise in that it has blown the lid on a kind of behavior which clearly is not acceptable?
Yeah, as I said, anything that works against market integrity cannot be acceptable, right? Because if you erode the confidence investors and all the different market players have in the market, you are creating a very serious trap for us, regulators, and for all the market in general. So we really have to work very hard in that regard.
And of course, Brazil is about to assume a leadership role within IOSCO from September onwards. It's going to be critical for IOSCO moving forwards that progress towards improving the quality of these benchmarks globally is in actual fact achieved. What's Brazil going to do to facilitate that process?
Well, Brazil is, first of all, we are very committed to IOSCO. We believe very much that it's important that as we go forward, in this business here, you have to have this global coordination and at the same time respect local jurisdictions, right? But having this balance is what we believe. Brazil it has always been very active in all the major policy committees of IOSCO. We are very active in the board, and we believe that we have to work hard so everyone all the major capital markets understand what are the principles and they stick to the principles. It's important to have a checks and balances system. Now, as you know, all the G20 economies, they have every 5 years an independent review done to make sure that we are sticking to the principles and also to identify areas for improvement. And I think it's very important. It has been a very important step in strengthening what our role as regulators.
And to what extent then is the distinct political economy of Brazil important in this respect in terms of highlighting not only the rights of market participants, but also the duties and responsibilities of market participants to ensure not only that the market is behaving with integrity, but also that it is actually providing a real value and a real purpose in terms of value creation for the real economy?
Well, Brazil is at a crossroads now. We have a huge amount of infrastructure investments that need to be done in the next couple of years. And it's clear that the capital markets is a serious alternative and one of the right alternatives to complement the banks and the role of the government. So if we don't act together and on a coordinated basis, it's not going to be good for the Brazilian economy. And that's why we have chosen for the theme of the General Conference how capital markets can be leveraged to promote and sustain economic growth in the long run. I think that's the main topic of the Rio Conference, is understand how capital markets can actually be a tool to sustain economic growth.
So leverage is a good thing, but only if linked to productive purposes.
Totally, and and the topics that we will be discussing at the general conference is going to basically be some points that I feel are cornerstones for that. We are going to be discussing what needs to be done in terms of corporate governance. We are going to be discussing long-term financing. We are going to be discussing investor education and protection. And so those themes are very, very important. And we also be discussing enforcement, because you can have everything, but if you don't have safe markets, you don't go anywhere. Investors need to believe that markets are safe and that they are protected. And so you have to be clear that if things don't go well, there are enforcement rules in place.
Leonardo Pereira, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in Rio.
No, thank you very much. I hope we get together in Rio.